not for 1 second related to the COVID-19 pandemic. This, of course, is related to a multitude of issues which are gripping our nation. 30-year high inflation, the loss of 200,000 jobs last month alone, a loss of hope for the future, and uncertainty in our physical and mental well-being. All of these difficulties I place squarely at the feet of the leadership of the Liberal Party. The job of great leadership is, of course, to inspire others to want to follow them. It is not to coerce or bully or mock or name-call or frighten them into following you. It is to unify people and to recognize, of course, that those things which bind us together in the greatness of this Canadian nation are greater than those things which citizens may think are tearing us apart. As per Mike Myatt from Forbes magazines, he gave us a leadership job description in 2012, and I quote, "I would suggest much of what we view today being represented as leadership is actually a cheap imitation of the real thing by those who are role-playing, but clearly are not leading." Leadership, again, this goes on to quote, Madam Speaker, leadership is about maximizing a W-2. It's not about personal glory or media attention. Put simply, true leadership isn't about the leader. Leadership is more than a title. It's a privilege, and therefore a burden of the highest responsibility. Nothing is more dangerous than a leader who loses sight of their real purpose to serve something greater than themselves. I'll continue to quote, Madam Speaker, because I think this bears perhaps some learning here. Courage, character, humility, vision, wisdom, integrity, empathy, persistence, compassion, aggressivity, discernment, commitment, confidence, a bias to action, the ability to resolve a conflict, a servant's heart, determination, creativity, self-discipline, love, loyalty, outstanding decision-making ability, engaged, authentic, transparent, a great strategic thinker, passion, a positive attitude, intelligence, great communication skills, common sense, generosity, the ability to identify and develop great talent, someone who creates a certainty of execution, attention to detail, faith, an active listener, a prolific learner, respect for others, innovative, excellent tactical capability, charisma, extreme focus, a high risk tolerance, a broad range of competencies, and the list goes on. I end the quote there. Much food for thought in that quote. Madam Speaker, I realize that was very long. However, I think some of the best writings were embodied here in this description of leadership qualities. Not once in there did we hear the words division, stigmatization, mocking, name-calling, villainization. Not heard in any of that list of great leadership qualities, Madam Speaker. These words are important for all of us here, all of us parliamentary colleagues, and Canada in general to reflect upon, as I believe Canada is now in the crisis of leadership of this nation. This makes it more importantly for those things which we now know are up for debate and indeed need to be debated. I realize, of course, Madam Speaker, that many of my colleagues simply wish to move on to the topic at hand of rapid tests and their deployment to the provinces for use for all Canadians. Certainly, the Conservative members on this side of the House have been advocating for the deployment of rapid tests for, I don't know, perhaps 18 months now, almost 2 years. That is why we're here almost 2 years into the pandemic, and the government is now asking to spend $2.5 billion on rapid tests. Is this now perhaps too little, too late, and not at the right time, which has become the motto of this Liberal government? As I spoke to one person about it as we begin to learn to live with COVID-19, as it becomes an endemic and not a pandemic, and perhaps all of us will simply learn to stay home when we have symptoms, then what is the usefulness of rapid tests at that point? Perhaps a rhetorical question. Does it give us any further protection? What is the sensitivity and specificity of the rapid tests? Where do they come from? Are they domestically produced? Shouldn't they be domestically produced? How useful are they in the period before people have any symptoms? During this dynamic time of new science and great controversy associated with my aforementioned remarks, the answers to those questions will be difficult, debatable, and perhaps downright unanswerable. However, I do think that should the use of rapid tests give Canadians some increased awareness of the possibility that they may have COVID, yet balance this with the false reassurance that they do not, then there may be some usefulness in procuring these tests at this time. Another concern, of course, is that since many Canadians are frustrated and exhausted, unfortunately there is more than an equal chance that many of these tests will sit on shelves and go unused until their usefulness expires. Besides the potential for giving Canadians a false hope, those who indeed have the illness but are given a false negative test result, the expiry of these tests on the shelf without being used could perhaps be the greatest tragedy of all after having spent $2.5 billion that this Liberal government has asked for at the current time. Decision-making, good decision-making, is about having the right data at the right time and the right or correct hands of those capable of making the right decision. Once again, I would say to my fellow colleagues, I would be exceedingly concerned that this government continues along with its decision-making motto of too little, too late, and not at the right time. I would also suggest that it's important that the government, along with these tests, roll out a plan for adequate instruction to the Canadian population. Many have had PCR tests in the past, and the possibility of collecting an improper sample using a rapid antigen test is significant. From the current medical literature, it also appears there's a possibility that collecting a throat sample and then a nose sample may be more accurate. Hopefully not the other way around. Of course, many Canadians have seen such news, and the actual manufacturer would have to weigh in on those discussions, and the most appropriate thing would be to have a national plan with advertising both on social media and on the television with video coverage would be appropriate to give Canadians good instruction such that an adequate sample would be collected to give the best possible result. This, of course, would take time, and significantly more financial resources would have to be added to the $2.5 billion requested simply for the tests themselves. Also, we have to understand the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary talked about giving these out at pharmacies for free, which is not unreasonable. We're funding them as a government. But should we expect pharmacists to be the ones on how to instruct people how to use them? That would be unacceptable, and therefore that would be important for the media to help us with that. So we've looked at budgetary consideration, the massive amount of money, that $2.5 billion is, 17 tons of loonies. We looked at the issue of democracy and the vast responsibility and history that is behind this democratic institution to which we all have a responsibility and for which we've been elected to be here and to support the ideals of our constituents. We've discussed the significant lack of leadership shown by this Liberal government, which in and of itself would necessitate that any legislation brought forward by this Liberal government would require a debate. We've also talked about the tests themselves, their potential for improper use, their potential for inaccuracies, and the potential that they may not be used at all given the state of this pandemic in which Canada finds itself. Madam Speaker, I'd be remiss in my remarks if I didn't mention the desertion of at least 3 caucus members of the Liberal Party. To me, Madam Speaker, what this suggests that is even within the confines of the Liberal Party, notwithstanding those of us who sit in opposition, there is dissension as to which direction the government should go. This has been supported by several media interviews and, of course, by said members, and perhaps even more will follow. If within the party these desertions continue and the dissension continues, how could other parties simply support putting forth a bill without any debate?
Déclaration des députés. Statements by members. The Honourable Member for Mississauga East Cookville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A few years ago, I had the honour to travel to Ukraine to oversee the elections as part of our delegation of Canadian parliamentarians. It gave me an opportunity to get to know Ukrainians up close and personal. In my riding of Mississauga East Cooksville, we have a vibrant Canadian-Ukrainian community, including my lovely wife, Christina, who is of Ukrainian descent. All of them are deeply concerned for their families and friends in Ukraine. They're worried about the Russian aggression, which not only is a threat to Ukraine, but to all of Europe. Like our Minister of Foreign Affairs and our Right Honourable Prime Minister, who have strongly voiced, we stand with Ukraine. We are working with our NATO allies and have extended Operation Unifier. When Ukraine needed financial support, we were there. We stepped up with more support for military training and cyber intelligence. Our commitment includes our doubling of the Canadian Armed Forces members that are working alongside our NATO allies to help protect Ukraine. We will continue to do whatever is needed to de-escalate the current situation and will continue to stand with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
The Honourable Member for Denison-Mississippi, Churchill River.
Here, bravo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's a privilege today to rise and honour the life of Harold R. Johnson. A member of Montreal Lake Cree Nation and a resident of La Ronge, Harold has been a voice for Northern Saskatchewan through his work as an author that captured the essence of the region, the communities, and the people. Harold joined the Canadian Navy at the age of 17, and afterwards became a logger and a miner like so many Northerners do. He followed that experience with a decision to return to school, eventually earning a law degree from Harvard University. After years of running his own private practice and then becoming a Crown prosecutor, Harold pursued his passion of writing and began an illustrious career as a published author. His book, Firewater, How Alcohol is Killing My People and Yours, was a finalist for the Governor-General's Literary Award for Nonfiction. Harold's influential voice in Northern Saskatchewan and all of Canada will live on through the words he has left us. Madam Speaker, I ask all members of this House to join me in recognizing the life and the legacy of Harold R. Johnson.
Hear, hear. Wow.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener, South Hespeler.
Madam Speaker, today I would like to highlight an amazing small business located in my riding of Kitchener South Hespeler. Papoose Place Subs and Ice Cream, affectionately known as Papoose, has been a fixture of Hespeler's downtown core and a local favorite for 25 years. Owner Chris Bogas purchased the business when it was in its infancy, and through hard work and determination has turned it into the award-winning icon that it is today. Immigrating from Greece and trained as a butcher, Chris is a testament to the entrepreneurial spirit that makes Canada great. He has provided locals not only with great food and friendly service, but with countless fond memories for the people of Hespeler to cherish. Bearing such local significance, I was saddened to learn that Papoose will be closing its doors later this month. While we will all deeply miss Chris's presence in Hespeler, he's assured me that his Galt location will remain open and he looks forward to serving his loyal customers there. Trust me, it's worth the drive. I speak on behalf of all those in Hesper when I thank you for all the memories and your many years of service to the community. I ask the members.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
During the recent election, many issues were raised by the great people of Vancouver Kingsway, but none came up more than the housing crisis. To respond to this, I recently held a town hall to focus on one concrete measure to provide affordable homes to Canadians: co-op housing. This was born out of my visits to the many thriving co-ops in my riding that were built through the federal co-op program housing of the housing program of the 1970s and 80s. I was joined by several outstanding members of our community who shared their experience, knowledge, and vision as to how we can expand this incredibly successful housing model into the 21st century. Bernie Foyle of Still Creek, Cassia Cantrow of Trout Lake, and Nancy Hannum of Falls Creek Co-ops provided their first-hand perspectives, and UBC Professor Patrick Condon lent excellent economic advice. What is clear is that we can and we must get all levels of governments working together now to build many more of these secure, affordable, community-building gems.
Honourable member for Sudbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today marks International Day for Women and Girls in Science. This is a time to highlight the importance of equal access and full participation of women and girls in all areas of science and technology. Our role is to ensure not only that women and girls are present in the sciences, but also to ensure that they have the means to be leaders, innovators, and agents of change. Madam Speaker, I want to recognize the role played by organizations in my riding of Sudbury, such as Women in Mining, Women in Science and Engineering, and Modern Mining Technology Sudbury. These organizations are working to strengthen the role of women and girls in the sciences, not only as benefiting from change, but also as the very agents of change. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dauphin-Swan River, Nicola.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Bob Edmondson. Bob passed away last month after a battle with cancer. He served as my campaign manager in both my nomination and first campaign. He would later serve my constituents as outreach coordinator. It is fair to say if it were not for Bob's steadfast support, I would not be here today. Bob was a man of faith and family. He loved watching his boys Joel and Jesse play hockey, not only as a dad, but as a coach. He was especially blessed to watch Joel win a Stanley Cup. His unwavering dedication to help others was Bob's way. He was a true coach, just not in sport, but in life. I was honored to call Bob my friend. I know I will miss his wise words and witty sense of humor. My heart goes out to his wife Lois and all his family. Rest in peace, Bob. You will be missed.
The honourable member for Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was very excited to announce two initiatives that will bring 20 units of low income in my riding of Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake. The Soul Harbour Rescue Mission project, representing $3.38 million, will bring a facility of 12 units, affordable units, in the Chesapeake area, targeting vulnerable women. The Fairfax Homes project was designed by the folks at Akuma. It will bring $3.1 million of funding and will produce 8, if you want, affordable housing units for African Nova Scotian seniors and those with disabilities in the Cherrybrook area. Both projects, Madam Speaker, will capture the spirit of what it is, rapid housing, and how important it is and why it was designed. I look forward to the completion of these projects and, of course, the continued investments in Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake. Thank you.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Madam Speaker, 12 years ago tomorrow, my riding was proud to host many events of the 2010 Winter Olympic and Paralympic Games. These games were an unqualified success where Canadian athletes won the most gold medals ever won for a country at the Winter Games. Infrastructure investments greatly enhanced the quality of life of the entire region, and the event served as a turning point for reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The region is also again now launching a bid to host the Winter Games in 2030, but this time it's in fact being led by the 4 host First Nations, a first for the Olympic Games. As the people of West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country continue to make Olympic history, I want to highlight 7 athletes from my riding who are competing in Beijing. Broderick Thompson, Simone Dartois, Sofiane Gagnon, Natalie Corliss, Trinity Ellis, Reed Watts, Marielle Thompson, and the many other high-level athletes that continue to train in the region. I wish you all the best of luck, and I know that you will continue to make our community and our country proud. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. St. John Campus has played a fundamental role in ensuring the vitality of the Francophonie in Western Canada, being the only post-secondary institution for Francophones in Winnipeg. It's a real cultural hub for the Franco-Albertan community. We know that there is a growing demand for bilingual workers, and the needs are met through this campus in ensuring qualified and bilingual workers. Unfortunately, since 2000, the campus has suffered unstable funding and a freezing of funds. It's time for the government to set aside partisanship and ensure adequate, permanent, predictable, and indexed to the cost of living funding to ensure that this campus can grow and continue. This is not only important for the Franco-Albertan community, but for the viability of the entire Francophone community network across the country.
The honourable member for Beaches East York.
Madam Speaker, with the passing of John Hondrick, we lost a dedicated city builder and a newspaperman who believed deeply in the value of journalism, both in the service of progressive values and as essential for a healthy democracy. Born into newsrooms, John started as a copy boy and night reporter with the Ottawa Citizen before joining the Toronto Star as a reporter and going on to become a bureau chief, then editor, publisher, and chairman. Receiving the CJF's Lifetime Achievement Award, John called attention to the crisis in journalism today. He spoke of quality journalism as a form of public service, the need to confront lies with truth, and he challenged all of us to make quality journalism thrive in Canada. On behalf of our 416 caucus, we pay our respects and remember John Hondrick for his philanthropy, mentorship, and humility, as a passionate advocate for social and racial justice, as a fierce defender of his reporters and of journalism, as an advocate for Toronto and a New Deal for cities, and above all, as a champion of newsrooms who believed that the newspaper was there to do the public good.
The honourable member for Langley-Aldergrove.
Madam Speaker, the people of my riding of Langley-Aldergrove are pleased to have a commitment from all levels of government now to extend Metro Vancouver SkyTrain from downtown Surrey into downtown Langley. It is exactly what Langley needs, one of Canada's fastest growing urban centres, but Madam Speaker, it's not enough. Every day, thousands of commuters are stuck in traffic on Highway 1, westbound in the morning, eastbound in the afternoon. The 264th interchange has not been expanded since it was first built in 1964, despite explosive growth in the area. We are looking to all levels of government to commit to widening Highway 1 from Langley through Aldergrove into Abbotsford. This critical section of the Trans-Canada Highway is vital to all of Canada. It is the Lower Mainland's primary highway link to the rest of Canada. It services Canada's the largest port, the Port of Vancouver, our third largest urban centre. Madam Speaker, it's time to get the job done for my riding, for British Columbia, indeed for all of Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Madam Speaker, we should be proud of all forms of energy in Canada and our history in the energy sector. 75 years ago, on February 13, 1947, well number 1 gushed for the first time.
The famous Vern dry-hole hunter finally finds what he was looking for, and this discovery was the launch of the greatest energetic and economic development in Canadian history. Cette découverte a eu des effets bénéfiques.
This discovery had benefits for all Canadians. Over $500 billion were shared with the provinces today. We are proud to see that Canada is one of the countries, if not the country, in the world with the strictest environmental rules.
Action.ca wrote, and I quote, "The world needs more Canadian energy. Yes, we can support both climate action and Canadian oil and gas. Success is tied to our record of environmental innovation and emission reduction," unquote. Oui, Madame la Présidente, on peut... Yes,
Madam Speaker, we can look after the environment and Canadian energy sector. One doesn't prevent the other. As long as we need energy, let's ensure that it's Canadian.
And happy 75th anniversary, the
honourable member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
I rise today to honour Dr. Nagula Dharmasangari, a Tamil Canadian scientist and educator. He obtained an electrical engineering degree from Texas A&M University, master's and doctoral degrees from McMaster University, and an MBA from Oxford. He served as he was a pioneer in wireless technology and served as a principal scientist at BlackBerry. He was an adjunct professor at both McMaster University and the University of Waterloo. At Waterloo, he helped form the Center for Intelligent Antenna and Radio Systems. Dr. Sangaree left an indelible mark in the realm of Canadian innovation, having secured over 20 inventions, 36 publications, and reviewed over 3,000 patents. He believed in the value of education and will forever be part of an awe-inspired generation of scientists around the world. He's deeply missed by his loving wife, Crystalline, son Joshua, family, and friends. May your soul rest in peace. Buongiorno.
The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby, and may I remind members please to keep quiet so we can listen.
Madam Speaker, we see people are suffering from the impacts of the convoy. Truckers and small business owners and residents have been harassed and even assaulted during this application. In Windsor, we are seeing that our supply chain is being impacted, as well as the construction of cars, and there has been a shutdown. Schools have been targeted. Thousands of workers are finding it more difficult to feed their families and pay their rent, but instead of showing leadership for weeks, the Prime Minister has spent this time looking to give apologies instead of proposing solutions. Canadians are tired of excuses. The government must use all the tools available to put an end to this occupation that is undermining Canadian workers and their families, and to work on a plan to make it stop. The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I want to take this opportunity to thank all those who ensure that French is heard in this theoretically bilingual institution. I am talking about the parliamentary interpreters. Difficult career, but very interesting. The work of an interpreter has taken a turn for the worse with virtual meetings during the pandemic. Many have suffered from cognitive fatigue and auditory injuries. On numerous occasions, I have sung the praises of this fascinating career to Noemi, a young translation student that I know. Resilience, dedication, and professionalism that the interpreters have shown to date deserve my greatest admiration. You have chosen this field because you love it, and I hope you can stay strong despite the challenges in this hybrid parliament. Please rest assured that you have my deepest gratitude, along with that of the entire Bloc Québécois team. We look forward to continue to work with you.
The honourable member for Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes Brock.
Speaker, the deliberate politicization of the pandemic has undermined trust in our public health institutions and has damaged national unity. Western alienation, rich versus poor, urban versus rural, vaccinated and unvaccinated. The divisions in this country are real. During the election, Speaker, the Prime Minister chose to capitalize on Canadians' fear and sow division for his own political gain. Shame on that Prime Minister, who, for the first half of the pandemic, told Canadians there were vaccines for those who want them. Then, sensing political gain, that message morphed into one of partition. You have the right not to get vaccinated, he said, but you don't have the right to sit next to someone who is. The Prime Minister's opportunism has created two classes of Canadians. Canadians now watch as the rest of the world moves forward, ending mandates and removing restrictions, while our government has no clear plan to do the same. It's time for this government to listen to the experts, trust the science, and find a more sustainable way to end the pain, the trauma, frustration of 2 long years of isolation.
The honourable member for Brampton Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Early in 2020, we were all facing an unforeseen global crisis. It was a life and death situation, leading to anxiety, fear, and confusion. Our Prime Minister and his team took the measure necessary to keep Canadians safe and to keep our economy going during this pandemic. On behalf of the residents of Brampton Centre, I would like to thank the Right Honourable Prime Minister for his leadership, standing up for Canadians, and having their backs when they needed it most. This deadly virus is not yet defeated. Vaccine mandates help Canadians safe. We must not allow a small group of extortionists to sabotage those efforts. Let's not squander the hard-fought achievement of the past 2 years by abandoning the fight before victory is achieved. Thank you.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
Madame la Présidente,
Work together. That should be at the heart of the Prime Minister's thoughts during this very difficult time when every citizen is tired of the pandemic. Unfortunately, found out this week from the president of the Liberal Quebec caucus that the Prime Minister chose an approach that would divide and stigmatize Canadians. The opposition and more Liberal members consider that the Prime Minister needs to table a plan for a return to normal life. When will we see this plan that will give hope to Canadians?
Le ministre de la Sécurité publique.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Monsieur le Président, depuis le début, nous soutenons toutes les villes qui sont impactées par la
We are with all cities that are impacted by the convoy. We've added resources such as RCMP officers in order to offer tactical and logistical support. And we are ready to offer more support. We've had productive meetings with the city today. We will continue to monitor the situation and pursue a strategy to get out of the pandemic through vaccination. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, that's not a plan. For months now, Canadians have spoken out. The Prime Minister is responsible for the current situation. When Canadians suffer, when they're waiting for some hope, they can't just be content with being told that he understands them. He's the Prime Minister, and it is his responsibility. The member for Mont-Royal and Parliamentary Secretary clearly expressed in this place why will the Prime Minister still refuse to present a plan to put an end to vaccination mandates and restrictions. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Madame la Présidente, nous avons une stratégie et un plan.
Madam Speaker, we have a clear plan. Our strategy will get us out of the pandemic through vaccinations. When it comes to measures at the border, we will continue to listen to our public officials who work in public health. This is an effective plan, but now this convoy has to leave. It's not a demonstration of respect for the law. We need to uphold the law. That's how we live here in Canada. The Honourable Member from Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, please allow me to explain to my colleague that Canadians are wondering, and they have reason to do so, what is the criteria that's going to be used to raise restrictions? The vaccine mandates, working at home, PCR tests at the border. Is the Prime Minister waiting for 100% of Canadians to be vaccinated? We are the most vaccinated country in the G7. Canadians have done their part, and we're proud of it. My last question for the Prime Minister is this. What's his plan to quickly end and peacefully end the protests, which are gaining ground? Why? Because of his lack of leadership. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Health.
I
would like to thank my honourable colleague for the question. Canadians have worked hard to end the spread of COVID-19, but we have to continue our efforts. We all have a role to play in preventing its spread, and we all have to work together to get through the crisis.
Public health measures like physical distancing, wearing a mask, and yes, as my honourable colleague pointed out, getting vaccinated, we are all keeping our communities safe. And I thank my members opposite for ensuring that their communities continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Barrie-Innister.
Canadians need and want a clear plan to end the mandates and restrictions. This week, 4 Liberal MPs came out against their own government and are demanding that the mandates be removed. I agree with them, and I also completely agree with the Liberal member from Louis-Hébert who said that the Prime Minister has intentionally stigmatized and divided Canadians for political gain. The Prime Minister has stopped basing his decisions on science. He's now basing them on political science, doing whatever it takes to save his own political skin. When will Canadians have a clear plan to end the mandates?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And ever since the beginning of this pandemic, Canadians have all wanted to know when this will be over and when we can go back to the way that things were before. I count myself among them. And every step of the way, we have had to adjust measures. We've developed new proposals and introduced novel programs to help keep Canadians safe and to ensure that Canadians know what's going on in a timely manner. The drop in Omicron cases recently means that we can make some changes. Things have already begun to change across the country, but we're going to continue to follow the science, the evidence, and we've done that from the start. And it's kept Canadians safe. And I reject the notion that we're allowing politics to get in the way when the member opposite is clearly...
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
It's not based on science, it's based on political science. Yesterday at Ethics Committee, Anne Kavukian said she found it disturbing that the government collected phone data without informing the public first, or worse, without their consent. Serious questions remain about whether the privacy rights of Canadians have been protected. The Privacy Commissioner has received so many complaints that he's opened an investigation. Canadians want answers. They also want PHAC to halt this program until their privacy can be guaranteed. Will the government respect the decision of the House of Commons to immediately suspend this data gathering program until we are sure that the privacy rights of Canadians have been...
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our top priority from the very beginning of this pandemic has always been keeping Canadians healthy and safe while upholding the privacy standards that Canadians expect. And over the course of the pandemic, the Public Health Agency of Canada has used de-identified and aggregated data to perform and inform our government's response to COVID-19 and to transparently provide Canadians with information on the pandemic. That mobility data is released to the public and updated weekly via COVID Trends and the Weather Canada application. And while the mobility data being used by the Public Health Agency of Canada contains no personal information whatsoever, we will continue collaborating with the Ethics Commissioner and remain committed to safeguarding.
Honorable Député de Saint-Jean.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam Speaker, reinforcements are coming to Ottawa for the weekend, but once again, the reinforcements are not for the police, they're for the occupiers. For 4 days now, the Chief of Police in Ottawa has been asking for 1,800 more officers. Police officers and Parliamentary Protective Services are working day and night, and they deserve the federal government's support. Will the minister confirm that law enforcement will get the 1,800 extra officers they need, or will the occupiers be the one who are going to get their way for a third weekend? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madame la Présidente.
Pardon, Madam Speaker.
Du vandalisme aux actes de violence.
From vandalism to violence, the Convoy has disrupted the city. No one is above the law. We expect the law to be applied. From the beginning, we've been there to support the city and the police, including by providing additional officers from the RCMP. Our absolute priority is to end the illegal blockade, to uphold the law, and to help people in Ottawa find their lives again. Madam Speaker, the state of emergency has been declared in Ontario, but wow, it doesn't show here at federal parliament. What started as a protest against vaccination has become a siege of Ottawa's downtown. It's transformed into barricades in Windsor, Manitoba, and Alberta, and these barricades are threatening our supply chains and economy. It turned into an international movement with impacts in the United States and France and New Zealand and elsewhere. The federal government's laissez-faire isn't reducing tension, it's making it worse. When will the minister note that putting one's head in the sand doesn't work? The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, peut-être que ma collègue...
Madam Speaker, perhaps my colleague has missed all the news and the action that the federal government has taken. We've added resources to bolster police forces here in Ottawa 3 times now, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. We added officers to help out here in Ottawa. And even in Coutts, Alberta, we're continuing to work with the government of Alberta. From the beginning of the convoy, this government has taken real steps, such as adding officers.
Westminster Burnaby.
Protests financed and backed by wealthy far-right Americans forced thousands of Canadians out of work this week as border crossings are shut down and supply chains are completely blocked. Communities are asking for federal leadership, and the Prime Minister seems caught frozen in place, like a deer in the headlights. Even our neighbors note the absence of leadership. The Washington Post reports this morning that the Biden administration wants the Prime Minister, quote, to use federal powers to resolve this situation. Why is this Prime Minister so incapable of managing this crisis? Why is he passing the buck to everyone else?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague for the question, and indeed, right from the beginning of this convoy, we have been showing strong leadership by providing law enforcement with all of the resources that they need in Ottawa, in Windsor, and as well in Coutts, Alberta. My colleague refers to seeing leadership at the federal level. Yesterday, Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to have participated in a call between the Prime Minister and all opposition parties, and I think that was a very constructive dialogue. And Madam Speaker, while our colleagues may be heckling, I would be calling on the Conservatives to join the federal government in calling on the Convoy to go.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Madam Speaker, the Convoy is blocking Canadians from...
Order. The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Convoy is blocking Canadians from going to work across the country. People in my region of southwestern Ontario are heavily impacted. All Canadians are missing much-needed national leadership during this crisis. They're tired of jurisdictional excuses, and they just want this to stop. The vast majority of Canadians have done their part. They're following public health measures, and we owe them to use every tool available to stop these occupations and to work on a plan. When will this government end this occupation that is harming Canadian workers and their families?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, my colleague is absolutely correct in that 90% of Canadians have taken up their vaccinations, and it is a small, angry lot that continues to participate in these illegal blockades, which is why the government will provide law enforcement with all the tools and resources that they need. Our number one priority is very clear, Madam Speaker, and that is to end the illegal blockades, uphold the law, and make sure that we get trade and travel moving again. And that's why it is so imperative that every member in this chamber call on the Convoy to go home.
The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Provinces and countries around the world are removing mandates and restrictions that lack compassion and empathy and are not in line with our allies and other G7 countries. Is the Prime Minister waiting to once again be the last to act? For the last 2 years, Canadians have been continually let down by this Liberal government. It is time for Canada to have a clear path out of this pandemic. Canadians have sacrificed to keep our communities safe, but now they're being ignored and discredited. When will they stop dividing and end the mandates?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for the question. And ever since the beginning of this pandemic, all Canadians have wanted to know when it will be over and when we can go back to the way that things were. And I count myself among them. I'm eager to get back to normal as well. The reality is we'll continue to do what's right for Canadians and keep people safe throughout this pandemic. Different jurisdictions have handled things differently, and we've seen that every step of the way. This includes some jurisdictions across this country, which we've been there to support, and different countries who have had much worse outcomes in some cases, and even with more restrictions. I'm proud of the fact.
Honourable Member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, there are no gold medals for spin doctoring. This Prime Minister has stumbled from failure to failure on the COVID-19 response, and he seems to have forgotten the most pressing need for Canadian families: a foreseeable and successful return to normal public life. Yeah. Instead of dismissing and stigmatizing Canadians who voice valid concerns, he needs to rise above politicizing this pandemic and provide answers. When will the Liberal government stop alienating those he disagrees with and find a way to—
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And personal attacks aside, I'm proud of Team Canada, and I give them a quick little shout out over at the Winter Olympics. And I'm sure all of the members in this House are proud of our team. I don't know why you should want to take a personal dig at me for that. The reality is we want to continue to support Canadians. We want to keep them safe, healthy, and alive. We have to recognize this pandemic is not over, and we need to continue to trust science, encourage our neighbors to get vaccinated. I understand how frustrated Canadians are. I count myself among them, but we need to stay focused on keeping Canadians safe, and that includes some restrictions, but I will point out that most of those public health restrictions are provincial in nature. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable député de Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, nearly 2 years have gone by, and Canadians have held on to make it through this pandemic. It's time for the government to table a plan to allow citizens from all walks of life in our country to plan a return to a more normal life. We ask them to stop playing political games. The government must have a plan for reopening. Let's give Canadians some hope. When will the plan be tabled? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would like to thank my honourable colleague for the question. It's a very important one. The Omicron variant is spreading quickly. That is why we quickly implemented public health restrictions at the border to continue to protect Canadians from the spread of COVID-19. As I've already said, our government officially recommends that Canadians should avoid all non-essential travel outside of the country. Collectively and individually, we all have a role to play. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier.
On veut pas entendre des restrictions.
Madam Speaker, we don't want to hear about restrictions. We want a plan for reopening. Nearly 90% of Canadians are vaccinated. Here in Ottawa, protesters came to send a message to regain a certain amount of freedom. Unfortunately, because of this Prime Minister's partisanship, the protest became a blockade. It's the third weekend now. Can the Prime Minister commit to quickly resolve and peacefully resolve this deadlock?
The
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
That the blockades are causing harm in our communities. So I would ask him to ask all of his members, all of his colleagues on the other side, to ensure that we're all encouraging people to go home. Because as we've seen recently, the member from Carleton says he's proud of the trucker convoy. The anti-vax protester is exactly what he wants for his new political agenda. So please, let's encourage everybody to go home, to evacuate this blockade in Ottawa that is causing so much harm, so that we can get on with our lives and continue to support Canadians and keep them healthy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
From these Liberals, we continue to see the politics of division. Instead of talking to Canadians, they try and divide them. Instead of doing their job, they pass the buck to the provinces at what's squarely their jurisdiction, our international borders. It was this Prime Minister who once said it's the role of a PM to build a stronger country, not make it easier for some to break it apart. Leadership means having conversations even when they're with people you disagree with. So is the Prime Minister prepared to have these conversations and to peacefully and quickly end the impasse that this country's facing?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, just last night, the Prime Minister had a conversation with the leader of the Conservative Party and all other leaders. And of course, we don't agree on all of the ways in which we're going to get out of the pandemic. But the single thread, the golden thread that has run through our strategy is that we have to get people vaccinated. And it's nice now to see that the Conservatives have finally realized that it is either you can have disagreements, but you can't break the law. And that's why it's important that we all encourage the members of these illegal blockades to go home. No one is above the law, Madam Speaker. I would think that the Conservative Party, which is a party that claims to be the party of law and order, do the same thing.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Canadians deserve a plan from this government on when they're going to end the federal mandates. Countries around the world, provinces across this country are making that decision. Even Canada's top doctor has said it's time to return to normalcy. Like the Minister said, 9 out of 10 Canadians have been vaccinated. So is the goal from this government 100% before they reopen? And if that's the case, they need to tell Canadians that life won't get back to normal until 100% of Canadians are vaccinated. Canadians have done the hard work. It's time for this government to do their work. What is the plan to reopen?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And what my colleague from Leeds Grenville tends to like to ignore is that every person that gets vaccinated is one less person that's likely to experience severe outcomes or head to the hospital or indeed die from COVID-19. So, Canada's a big country and public health advice can vary across the country due to local epidemiological situations in various jurisdictions. And as such, it's the responsibility of each government to take decisions that are most appropriate to their local epidemiological context. We also know that Canadians want to finish this fight against COVID-19, and I'd ask the member to encourage his community to continue to get vaccinated. I know there's a very high uptake in his community.
L'honorable député de Manicouagan.
Madam Speaker, the federal government finally realized that it is inhumane to cut the guaranteed income supplement to the least wealthy seniors if they receive CERB. It has introduced Bill C-12, which will stop the cuts, but only for the July payment, when seniors will have for a year been making sacrifices at the grocery store and even at the pharmacy. 12 months of daily sacrifices. The federal government is cutting into these people's vital income and plans to continue doing so until the beginning of the summer. How is it humanly possible to not act more quickly?
Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the question. We can all agree just how challenging this pandemic has been on seniors, and our government has been there from the start to support them. We committed to help seniors by issuing a one-time payment to those on GIS where it was reduced due to pandemic benefits. Additionally, as the member said, we introduced Bill C-12 to exclude any pandemic benefit for the purposes of calculating GIS going forward. I urge the member and all those on the other side to put politics aside and support Bill C-12. Thank you.
The honourable member from Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, I think the federal government has a duty to be better than that. Between the time it publicly admitted that cutting GIS for the least wealthy seniors in December was catastrophic and the time when it actually will stop cutting into seniors' income in a payment they'll receive at the end of June, 6 months will have passed. 6 months. The solution's not complicated. We just have to stop cutting seniors' income. How can that take 6 months to implement? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
And again, thank you to the honourable member for the question, Madam Speaker. Low-income seniors rely on the different benefits that they receive, and we know that they count on them to make ends meet. That's why we boosted GIS for seniors who need it most, and we will deliver as soon as possible this one-time payment to affected seniors to compensate for any loss of GIS for taking pandemic benefits. As soon as the minister was appointed, she worked with officials and took action. And I have to say, Madam Speaker, I was proud during the economic and fiscal update when we announced a solution. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Association of Interior Realtors recently reported that the selling price of a typical single-family home in Kelowna has jumped to more than $1 million. That's up from $760,000 just the year before. The Liberals' housing plan is hurting families by making housing unaffordable and has been a failure. Home prices inflated $240,000 in just 1 year. Does the minister honestly believe that $1 million home is affordable to the average Canadian family?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. As you know, from the very beginning of our mandate, we've been tackling the essential issue of access to housing and affordability. In the throne speech, we were clear. We're going to be setting up many initiatives, whether it's the Housing Accelerator Fund, assistance for buying a first home, rent to own, and an annual tax on the value of real estate that belongs to non-residents.
For Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Liberals continue to be unclear with Canadians when it comes to their ideas to introduce new taxes on home sales. The CMHC backed a study into the supposed benefits of such a surtax, and the minister responsible for CMHC says he doesn't back that study. So why is his department studying policies he says he opposes, wasting taxpayer dollars on an organization who conducted the study that endorsed the Liberals in the last election?
Wow.
Unless it's about helping Liberal friends.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, et je remercie ma collègue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question.
Secretary?
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Sorry, I had an echo. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. I just want to remind her that it's difficult to take the Conservative Party seriously regarding affordable housing when they voted against a tax on foreign-owned homes last week. If the Conservative Party doesn't want to deal with the problem of foreign investors who are increasing costs of housing, well, we'll do it. We've been very clear. We're not going to put a tax on people's capital.
Madame la Présidente, ma question s'adresse...
Madam Speaker, my question's for the Minister of Finance, and I'll let her in on a little secret. People in my riding who are struggling don't care about the country's GDP when they're struggling to put food on the table. Many citizens have to choose between heating their homes or eating tonight. A year ago, we were cleaning our groceries, and today, the groceries are cleaning us out. When will the minister provide real tools and solutions to fight the ever-increasing problem of just inflation? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, we've cut taxes for the middle class twice and increased those of the wealthiest 1%. The Conservatives voted against it. We have indexed benefits to inflation, and Conservatives voted against it. We presented a bill and the funds necessary for a national early childhood strategy, and the Conservatives voted against it.
Member for Langley Aldergrove.
Madam Speaker, Canada's economy needs improved productivity, and for that we need to grow our workforce. More highly skilled immigrants, more people with the skills and the training and knowledge that employers require. But here's the problem, Madam Speaker. People can't afford to live in some of our economic generating cities because of out-of-control housing inflation. When will this government take concrete steps to curb inflation, increase the housing supply, and get Canada back into a leadership position in the G7?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Got enthusiasm for immigration as a strategy to grow the economy. And I look forward to tabling my plan with the immigration levels for the next few years in Canada sometime next week. He's right. We need to manage immigration in an appropriate way. So the workers who do come here to fill gaps in the labor force to maximize our economic potential do have a place to live. Madam Speaker, with record labor shortages, despite the fact that we have more jobs in Canada now than before the pandemic, immigration is going to be an important part of Canada's growth strategy. And I look forward to working with our Minister of Housing to ensure the national housing strategy makes housing more affordable for Canadians, including those who come to Canada.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Last year, BC commercial, recreational, and Indigenous fishers caught fewer fish in order to protect our salmon populations. They made big sacrifices that impacted their livelihoods to contribute to conservation efforts. But a recent report confirmed that Alaskan commercial fishers caught an estimated 800,000 sockeye salmon bound for BC. Will the minister work with her U.S. counterparts so the Pacific Salmon Treaty helps Canadian fishers and allows stocks to recover?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much for the question from the Honourable Member, Madam Speaker. And this is obviously a very important topic to the Pacific Coast and for all of Canada. And we're going to continue to work with our partners to do deep dives to determine how we can best help this industry. And we'll continue doing that as we've always have with our stakeholders in a collaborative and coordinated fashion. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Skeena Buckley Valley.
Madam Speaker, hundreds of fish harvesters on BC's coast applied for employment insurance based on the eligibility criteria on the department's website. After they applied, the department changed the criteria on its website and now is rejecting their applications. These fish harvesters have borne the brunt of recent fisheries closures. After years with little or no income, many are just barely hanging on. Now, either the government failed to communicate the eligibility criteria or it changed the goalposts at the last minute. Could the minister please inform this House? Which is it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
thank you again, Minister and Madam Speaker. And for my honorable colleague, again, as on the East Coast where I'm from, we understand the importance of helping our fishers and helping them through this troubled time. We were there during the pandemic. We'll continue to be there after the pandemic to ensure that people have the ability to stay afloat, to stay in good course. And that's what we're going to continue to do, Madam Speaker, continue to work every step of the way with the fishers to make sure that we're there 100%.
The Honourable Member for Surrey Centre.
Madam Speaker, this week we saw the Canadian Environmental Protection Act introduced in the Senate. CEPA is the cornerstone of federal environmental protection legislation in Canada, which aims to protect Canadians and the environment. Can the Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of Environment and Climate Change inform this House on how this bill will further protect our environment?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to thank the member for Surrey Centre for his important question and his environmental advocacy. Bill S5 will modernize the Canadian Environmental Protection Act for the first time in 20 years and has support from both industry and environmental organizations. CEPA recognizes for the first time that every individual in Canada has a right to a healthy environment. This legal right will lead to stronger environmental protections in tune with evolving science, especially for vulnerable communities exposed to harmful levels of pollution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cariboo Prince George.
Madam Speaker, in 2006, the CRTC shamelessly said no to the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention's request to bring a simple 3-digit suicide hotline to Canada. It's been 427 days since my motion to bring 988 to Canada unanimously passed in this House. Madam Speaker, in that time, 4,600 Canadians have lost their lives to suicide, and over 117,000 Canadians attempted suicide. What are the Liberals' plan if the CRTC heartlessly says no again?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our hearts go out to all the families and loved ones of those we have lost to suicide and to those who struggle with suicidal thoughts. It is essential for Canadians to have timely access to suicide prevention, and in addition to working to fully fund a national 3-digit mental health crisis and suicide prevention hotline, we are developing a pan-Canadian suicide prevention service. This initiative will provide access to crisis support whenever Canadians need it, and using the technology of their choice, either voice, text...
Honourable Member for South Okanagan, Shuswap, North Okanagan.
Madam Speaker, at Fisheries Committee, officials from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Seafood Inspection Agency could not identify who in government is responsible for ensuring imported seafood is not caught illegally or by using exploited workers. Illegal harvesting and the use of exploited workers is despicable. The government needs to get serious about stopping these activities. Why is the government not able to identify who is responsible for ensuring that fish and seafood imported to Canada is not caught illegally and it's free of exploited labor?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my honourable friend who I do sit with on the Fishing Committee. And first and foremost, let me just say that in terms of focusing on where our product comes from, how it gets there, how healthy it is, this government believes in a couple of things. It believes in science, it believes in process, it believes in getting things right. Over the past 6 years, we've been doing that, and there is room for improvement, and we recognize that. And that's why we embrace a study on seafood labeling, and that's why we focus on it in the last...
The Honourable Member for Chatham-Kent Leamington.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are calling for leadership in moving from pandemic to endemic and managing the country as it learns to live with COVID. But in another example of poor management, public health policy is now set against immigration legislation. As of February 28th, some guest workers came legally to work in our country, will have their working permits expire, and they will not be allowed to leave. This creates the situation for illegal immigration, as individuals may enter Canada unvaccinated and now know that they can stay. Minister, is this intentional?
Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. It's essential when it comes to Canada's immigration system that we have a rules-based process to protect the integrity of the system, to ensure that those who are coming to Canada meet the requirements of admissibility to Canada. It's also essential that we work with the Minister of Health and the Public Health Agency of Canada, put in place protections that will protect our communities and our residents against the spread of COVID-19. I look forward to continuing my work with the Minister of Health and any member of this House who has questions about the integrity of our immigration process and the need to protect Canadians, including through ensuring adequate coverage of vaccination right across the country.
Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
$1.7 million. That's not the price of a house in Hollywood Hills, California. That's the average home price in the town of Caledon in my riding. It's up 35% in 1 year. Now, the government will say they're spending all kinds of money doing this and doing that. Well, I've got a message from my constituents. It's not working. When will this government realize what they're doing is having no effect? It's an absolute disaster, and actually do something to help Canadians be able to afford a home.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, et je remercie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Once again, it's very difficult to take the Conservative Party seriously when last week it voted against one of the measures we presented to give Canadian citizens access to housing. Madam Speaker, we're talking about $72 billion, the biggest investing in housing that has been carried out for a great deal of time. That is the National Housing Strategy, and I would encourage our colleague to support us. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there has been a great deal of bitterness about the lockdown measures this winter, and I'm not talking about the trucks. I'm talking about people who were proud to make sacrifices to protect the most vulnerable, but who ultimately this winter got the sense that they were paying the price for chronic underfunding of the healthcare system. That's what brought the system down during the pandemic almost as much as the virus did. Will the government finally take notice and increase healthcare transfers to cover 35% of costs? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an important question. I will answer in English.
Our government has invested incredible amounts of money to ensure that, that we've been able to get through this COVID-19 pandemic. We've provided $63.7 billion to support Canada's health response, including $14 billion for vaccines and $5.3 billion for PPE and medical health equipment. And in 2020 and 2021, the government of Canada provided $41.9 billion in cash to support the provinces and territories through the Canada Health Transfer.
Honorable député d'Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Madam Speaker, that is the elephant in the room. The health system is fragile because the federal government hasn't funded it enough. It holds a great deal of responsibility for this. Today, we are responsible for rebuilding the healthcare network so that this never happens again. This is something that the provinces need to do in order to offer citizens the care they deserve and that they pay taxes for. And it's also a sine qua non to ensure that we never have to go through another lockdown to protect the system. Will the government increase healthcare transfers as Quebec and the provinces are asking? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, an important question. During the campaign, we committed to transfer $25 billion over 5 years to provide better support to healthcare. The provinces and territories have now received more than $47 billion through the Canada Health Transfer. And the territories will be receiving $500 million to help them prepare for various COVID measures.
Madam Speaker, last August, a 17-member Canadian Forces Evacuation Operations Advance Team arrived at Ali Al Salim Air Base near Kuwait City, so they could link up with the US and UK teams already on the ground in Kabul to save Afghans desperate to flee the Taliban. They sat idle for days, awaiting orders to deploy, wasting precious time to evacuate Afghans, with many losing their lives. Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we will not stop until we have got every remaining Canadian out of Afghanistan and continue to engage with all.
Can we listen to the answer, please? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This issue continues to be of the highest priority to the Canadian government. We will continue to work with allies, we'll continue to work with affected people until we have brought all Afghan Canadians home, as well as any of those who have helped us as Canadians in our forces, and we will continue to work until we have brought over 40,000 people to Canada.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'll tell you why, since the government's answers are absolutely useless. This government was more focused and had a higher priority on saving itself and on triggering a selfish and unnecessary election. While our allies were collectively evacuating over 70,000 people, this government told their own Liberal MP to mind his own business when he pleaded with the PMO to help those Afghans. Canada hasn't even met 20% of its target to help fleeing Afghan refugees. This is despicable. This government has damaged Canada's reputation and honour. Will it accept any responsibility?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our Canadian Armed Forces did everything we asked of them under extraordinary difficult circumstances. Canada was part of an air bridge with our allies that saved as many people as we could. Our armed forces worked around the clock to evacuate as many people as possible for as long as conditions permitted, including our former interpreters and local staff and citizens of allied countries. Under the leadership of the Minister of Immigration, we are committed to bringing 40,000 Afghan refugees to Canada. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Madam Speaker, experts, NGOs and veterans have all been critical in their analysis that one of the leading reasons for Canada's failure last summer in saving Afghans' lives was due to a lack of leadership and not having one Liberal minister assigned as the lead department. Testimony this week at the Afghanistan Committee indicates nothing has changed, as many of the ongoing issues cross global affairs, immigration and public safety. Madam Speaker, my question is simple. Would the lead minister responsible to coordinate the solutions to this ongoing humanitarian aid crisis please stand up?
Yes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question, and I'm pleased to clarify that I've been appointed as the lead minister responsible for the resettlement of 40,000 Afghan refugees. I'm further pleased to share that hundreds of Afghan refugees have arrived on 20 different commercial flights in the past few weeks, and we are seeing a regular pace of arrivals. With or without the cooperation of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, we will move forward and we will not waver until we achieve our goal of successfully resettling at least 40,000 Afghan refugees, which represents one of the most substantial commitments of any country in the world.
The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Throughout the country, businesses are gradually opening their doors, and they want to improve their capacity to guarantee a safe environment for their customers. We know that ventilation is an important tool in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, can the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance tell this House how Bill C-8, the Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for this excellent question. Bill C-8 would give businesses a 25% refundable tax credit for their measures to improve ventilation systems by increasing outside air supply or improving air quality, purification rather. If you have a small local business which needs help to buy a HEPA filter, this new support will be there for you. This is great support for businesses, and I hope the opposition will support it.
Madam Speaker, Canadian dairy producers are tired of this government ignoring their expertise. In 2018, the former Minister of Agriculture announced the new Dairy Vision Working Group. This group was meant to craft a vision for the future of Canadian dairy. Yet industry officials explained to me the minister has only consulted scientists and has yet to work with farmers. If the opinion of the dairy farmers is key to the successful future of this industry, why is the minister following the lead of the Prime Minister and not meeting with actual dairy farmers?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Madam Speaker, dairy farmers in my riding must be laughing. I mean, I have hundreds of dairy farmers in my riding, and I am in close contact with them. I am in regular contact with the Canadian Dairy Commission, the Canadian Dairy Association. We work closely together. They are working on their...
Can we listen to the answer the minister is trying to provide to the question? The Honourable Minister.
It's a very fair point.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I follow the dairy file very closely. I have hundreds of dairy farms in my own riding. I am in constant collaboration, discussion with their leaders, and I can assure you that we're working closely together for vision for the industry.
The Honourable Member for Battlefords Lloydminster.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Municipalities in my riding appreciate the essential work that the RCMP does in our communities. While the expected increased policing costs in the recent negotiated agreement is much higher than anticipated, despite their exclusion from this process, they are still on the hook for these costs. And for my constituents, this bill ultimately means fewer essential services or higher taxes. Madam Speaker, will this Liberal government throw them a lifeline and absorb the one-time cost of this back pay?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for the question, and I can assure her that we are in touch with her community. I also want to say that the arrangements which exist between the RCMP and provinces and municipalities are well established, so there is a framework there to ensure that there is a cost-sharing agreement, and of course we want to be fair and equitable as much as possible, and those processes will follow. But I do want to take a moment to thank the RCMP for all of the concrete support that they are offering communities right now with these illegal blockades, which is why it's imperative that they go home. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Thank you, Speaker. RCMP members are the providers of public safety in rural Canada. They deserve the increase in pay they negotiated with the federal government, but it shouldn't be left to local municipalities to foot the entire bill. Rural communities and municipalities do not have the Liberal government's capacity to borrow or print money, and they are required to balance their budgets. Why is the soft on crime Liberal government sticking municipalities with the entire bill and putting rural public safety at risk?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, to be clear, there are long-standing arrangements which exist between the federal government, provinces, and municipalities. And of course, we remain in very close touch with them to ensure that there is a fair and equitable support when it comes to the RCMP, Madam Speaker. We will always be sure that the RCMP are properly resourced so that they can provide public safety in communities across the country, which is something that we need now more than ever as we've seen these illegal blockades. It's important that those blockades end and go home so that Canadians can get back to their normal lives. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my constituents in Etobicoke Centre consistently share with me that they expect us to do all we can to fight climate change. Transportation accounts for 1/4 of Canada's total greenhouse gas emissions, and many Canadians are reducing their carbon footprints by making the switch to zero-emission vehicles. So could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources please explain what our government is doing to ensure that Canada's charging and refueling infrastructure is keeping up with and anticipating the growing adoption of zero-emission vehicles?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to thank the MP for Etobicoke Centre for that important question about zero-emission vehicles and the infrastructure across our country. Expanding Canada's infrastructure for zero-emission vehicles is important to making sure that we support Canadians to make that choice for these vehicles. We have invested in expanding the network. You can now drive from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria using a zero-emission vehicle, but we're doing more, including a recently opened program in Toronto and the GTA area that will expand the network by up to 300 new chargers to support in public.
The honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Last week, reports emerged that this government has been polling to see if they could get away with cutting back the Canada Post services Canadians rely on. Across the country, hundreds of thousands of people, including seniors and people with disabilities, rely on door-to-door delivery. While he says he's a friend to Labour, the Prime Minister continues to undermine union rights and good-paying jobs, and he failed to restore door-to-door mail delivery cut by Stephen Harper, despite a 2015 campaign promise to cut the service, to save the service. Well, this government confirmed today that they won't cut the Canada Post services and the jobs that Canadians rely on.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. From coast to coast, Canadians rely on Canada Post and its employees. Canada Post works to ensure its services are available to every Canadian in a timely manner. And as the member said, we imposed a moratorium on removing home delivery back in 2017. We are going to continue to provide excellent services to all Canadians through Canada Post. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And that is all the time for oral questions. Routine proceedings. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business for tabling of documents.
Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 32, Sub 2, I have the pleasure to table in both official languages the annual report on activities from 2019 to 2021 as prepared by the Canadian Ombudsperson for Responsible Enterprise. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Dépôt de projet de loi émanant du gouvernement.
Introduction of government bills.
Déclaration de...
Statements by ministers.
Rapport.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.